Hi guys, here's a case study of how I, as a product manager, helped a software company unlock $3.1 million a year in new revenue. I also helped push their retention number from 97% to a massive 112%. A quick setup before we start. I'll call this company Company X, and this is based on real world product management work that I personally did. But for legal reasons, I obviously can't name the company. But I'm going to give you all a hands-on look at exactly how I thought about the problem, the strategy, the roadmap, and building the solution step by step. So you can see how to think like a PM. And every number you're about to see reconciles. So feel free to check my math the whole way through. So without any further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to turn this video off now. So a little bit of an overview of what the company is about. So Company X sells software to field service businesses. So think of plumbers, electricians, HVAC repair, small and medium businesses or SMBs like that. And the product's core value proposition covers three main pillars. First, it schedules the jobs for the workers. Second, it tells the workers where to go. And third, it creates the invoices for them. So an invoice is just the bill for the work, right? So now here's the problem. Let's say your water heater broke. So you hire a plumber, he comes to your house, he fixes everything, and the bill comes out to be $850. So he sends you the invoice, right? So where did the invoice come from? The software, right? So the company access platform generated that bill. Okay, now you have to actually pay your plumber, right? So where do you pay? So here's the thing. You cannot pay in the software. So the product has a massive friction point in the user journey. There's no native pay button. So maybe you mail him a check, maybe he swipes your card on a separate little machine he carries around, maybe he texts you a payment link from some other app. Do you see the gap here? The software created the bill, but the money comes back through a completely disconnected door. And keep in mind, Company X doesn't see a dime of the transaction happening between you and the plumber. So how does Company X make money then? So the plumber pays the company a monthly software subscription to use the platform, and that subscription is currently the only revenue stream for Company X. All right, now think about the plumber side for a second, because you're not his only customer, right? So he's probably done 30 jobs like yours this week alone. So at the end of the week, he has to sit down with his invoices in one hand and his bank deposits in the other and manually reconcile them. So he has to work on which invoices got paid, which invoice corresponds to what check or what deposit in the bank, and it's an administrative mess for him. And on average, he's spending 6 hours a week on his manual workaround. Now, hold on, 6 hours a week? How do we know that, right? So, where does that metric even come from? We'll talk about our customer discovery process and how we validated that data point in a second. But first, we have to understand the strategic assignment here. So, my job as the PM was to align user experience with business value. So addressing that plumber's core pain point while also unlocking a brand new revenue stream for Company X. Because at the end of the day, a PM's entire job starts with deep user empathy and also knowing the customer's pain better than anyone else in the company. All right, so going to slide number 2. Before solving anything, let's understand the business because every product decision I make later flows from these metrics. Well, as shown here, Company X has 6,800 customers across 3 pricing tiers. And if we add it all up together, 3,900 starter accounts at $99 a month, that's 386,000 roughly. 2,300 pro accounts at $299 a month, that's $688,000 roughly, and 600 enterprise accounts averaging $1,250, that's $750,000 a month. Total about 1.82 million in MRR or monthly recurring revenue. And if we multiply by 12, we get roughly $21.9 million in ARR or annual recurring revenue. All right, now 2 major health metrics told us that the company was in trouble. First, customer acquisition cost was rising and top of funnel growth was flat, which means sales just was not adding much new logo volume anymore. Second, our net revenue retention or NRR was leaking. I know it's a lot of PM jargon, but simply put, NRR answers one simple question. So of all the customers you had a year ago, how much of their money do you still have today? Right? So company X was at 97%, and here's how you read it. So start at 100%, right? So revenue churn and contradiction, those are downgrades, were eating 5 points of our base. At the same time, expansion revenue, which are the upgrades, was adding back only 2 points. So 100 minus 5 plus 2 lands you at 97%. So in plain English, the existing customer base was shrinking 3% a year all on its own. And the board looked at this and handed down a strict product mandate. Increase your NRR to a best-in-class target of 110% within 18 months, or the company's next fundraise gets priced as a down round, which means that it would get valued lower than the last one. And in the startup world, that's about the worst news you can bring investors. All right. So now that we know a little bit more about the company, let's move to the next section. Again, before we solve anything, we need to map out our cross-functional stakeholders, and we also need to clarify who is responsible for what. At the executive level, there is the CPO, or Chief Product Officer. That's the leader who owns our overall product vision. And in this case, my executive sponsor. Then the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, the top money person. He's also guarding our OPEX, which is operating expenses and capital spend. There's also the CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, who owns sales. And you'll see him show up in a few times in this story. So there's the PMO, Project Management Office. They're keeping our cross-team timelines on track. And on the risk side, we have legal and InfoSec. They're handling regulatory compliance and security. And under business development, we have VP of Partnerships, who owns relationships with outside vendors. And finally, on the product squad itself, we have 11 engineers, 2 UX designers, 1 data analyst. So as the PM, my primary job is stakeholder management and cross-functional alignment, which means pointing all of these different people across all of these departments at the same problem and managing the dependencies between them. That is the whole gig. All right, step 2, product discovery. The board handed us a hypothesis, right? And the hypothesis was that customers get paid inside the software, basically an embedded payment processing system. So going back to our plumbing problem, that means instead of paying by check or Venmo or Cash App or some card machine, you as a customer would just pay right through the company access software, right? So that solves 2 things at once. One, the plumber doesn't have to do the manual work of matching each bank deposit or check to an invoice number and amount at the end of the week, because the payment and the invoice now live in the same place. And 2, if the money is flowing through our software, maybe we can take a little cut of it, maybe a transaction take rate, right? And generate expansion revenue. So now here's the first real PM move of this whole case. Okay, ready for this? Yeah, I treated that hypothesis as a theory to test, because sometimes executives will hand you solutions, and your job as a PM is to check whether the problem underneath all of it is actually real. So in the industry, we say that you fall in love with the problem, not the solution. And there's a practical reason for that discipline, because engineering capacity is the most expensive thing a software company spends. So you run validation before you build, right? Because building the wrong thing costs you 10 times more than researching the right one. So 3 streams of validation to start off. First, we have the quantitative behavior. So I went to our data analyst and asked her to pull the invoice export data, everything she could find about how customers were creating and sending bills through our product. And what we found was that 71% of monthly active users, or MAUs, 71% of MAUs create invoices inside our product, but they all collect the actual money somewhere else. That's the first finding, right? Second, qualitative customer interviews. I ran 48 of those interviews myself, and our designer sat in on about half of them so she could see the workflow pain firsthand. And this is where that 6-hour number comes from. So we literally went to plumbers and business owners and asked them, how long does it take you every week to match your bank transactions against the invoices that we generated from our software? And the average answer was 6 hours. By the way, you guys might have noticed that I've been using the word reconciliation. So that just means that matching your bank deposits back to the specific invoices they paid. So when I say reconciliation, picture that plumber on a Friday with his two lists, invoices in one hand and the bank deposits or checks on the other. That was the second validation. Third was pricing discovery. So we used a method called Van Westendrop, which is a 4-question survey that reveals what price range people find acceptable. And customers told us that card fees of around 2.8 to 3.1% felt normal to them because that's what they already paid elsewhere. So it means, so when a customer pays an $850 bill by card, about $25 of it goes to whoever processes the payment. And plumbers already accept that as the cost of taking cards. So they'd be fine paying us the same rate too, right? So which told us something big. We did not need to be cheaper than anyone, and we just needed to be equal on price and way better on the reconciliation headache. So that's the pain point that we were addressing for our plumbers, who are our customers in this case. Well, step 3, problem definition and market sizing. So the TLDR version so far is that our customers' work lives in our product, but the money escapes it. And stitching the two back together costs them around 6 hours a week. And the strategic insight that we have discovered throughout the streams of validation is that we do not need to win on price, we just need to win on reconciliation. Right? So which means we need to solve the plumber's Friday problem. And the way we do it is we embed a payment option right into the invoice itself. So, and the good part is that nobody else can copy this, because think about the card machine that plumber carries around. It can it can charge a card for sure, but it has no idea which invoice that charge belongs to, right? So it never saw the invoice. We made the invoice. So when someone pays through us, the payment and the invoice are the same record, and they will match automatically. So there's zero detective work there. The card reader physically cannot do that. And that is our unfair advantage, or sometimes we say that is our product moat. All right, okay, now we size the money, because now the number one rule you need to remember in this job is that an idea without a business case and a dollar figure attached does not get engineering resources allocated. So we have two inputs. First, our data showed the average customer who'd adopt these runs about $34,000 a month in invoices. So that just means add up all the bills a typical plumbing or HVAC business sends in a month where the customer could reasonably tap a card instead of writing a check. So it comes to around $34,000. Second, we modeled a 14% feature attach rate. In this case, attach rate means out of all our existing customers, what percentage would actually turn this payment feature on if we introduce that payment feature, right? So we can also call it feature adoption rate. So we estimated that 14 out of every 100 of our customers would adopt the feature, the payment feature, right? So the math is 6,800 customers times 14% gives you 952 accounts. That's our invoice payment size, right? So 952 accounts times 34,000 each is about $32.4 million a month. That would be flowing through us, by the way. Now, careful, that's not our revenue though. That's called gross merchandise value, or GMV. So this is the total money that would move through our product. Our revenue would be a cut of it, a slice of it, a small percentage of every dollar that flows through us. But look at the picture this paints, right? A $32 million monthly river was flowing right past our front door, and we weren't dipping a single cup into it. That is bad from a revenue generating point of view. It is bad. All right, now next slide. So step 4. So the big decision in this case, and this is my favorite part, by the way, because how you become a payment company is itself a product strategy and make or buy decision, right? So here's why, right? Because when someone taps pay, that money travels through a regulated chain of banks and card networks, and somebody in that chain has to be licensed and legally on the hook if things go wrong. And I'm talking about fraud and money laundering and fake businesses. So someone has to answer for all of this. So the real question is, how much of that payments infrastructure do we want to own? We have 3 options here. Option A, referral. So we just point our customers at someone else's payment service, like saying, hey, plumber, go use this payment company, and that company pays us a little thank you fee for the referral. Costs about $60,000 to set up. It launches in a single quarter, which is good, and it pays us almost nothing, around 5 basis points. You'll hear the concept of basis points in fintech products a lot. So basis points, or BPS, are hundredths of a percent. So 5 BPS means in this case 0.05% of every dollar. So on a $100 bill or on a $100 payment would make a nickel. That is not much money. And then we have as option B, payfac as a service. So a payfac is a payment facilitator, which is a company legally registered to process card payments for lots of businesses. So in this option, a third-party payfac runs all the machinery, the licenses, the fraud checks, the legal risk, and everything. But the whole thing is white labeled and embedded inside our software. So the customer does not see the third-party payfac, whoever. The customer only ever sees our brand. And we keep 55 BPS, which is 0.55% of every dollar flowing through us. On the $32 million a month GMV, that's real money. It costs around $380,000 in year 1, and it will launch in 2 quarters. All right, option C. Option C, we become the payfac ourselves. Now we get the licenses, we carry the risk, we own the machinery, we do everything, but we also get the biggest cut of all, 95 BPS, meaning 0.95%. That's almost a full penny of every dollar, but it costs around 1.2 million upfront, plus an additional 850K every single year for a compliance team. The lawyers, the risk analysts, the law requires, and it takes a year and a half minimum to stand up. So now the stakeholder politics, right? So in the meantime, the CRO wanted option C because it gives us those fat margins, right? That gives us the biggest cut per dollar. That 95 BPS looked delicious to a sales guy. The CFO, on the other hand, leaned toward option A because option A is by far the cheapest, and guarding OPEX, or operational expenses, is literally the CFO's job. So, 2 executives, 2 opposite positions, and both are legit. So what do you do as a PM? What you do is you put on your analyst hat and you bring math, right? So that's the data-driven decision-making part of it. The idea is that when a decision is contested, you replace opinions with a shared model everyone can look at and can play with, right? Because people will argue with your opinion all day, but it's much harder to argue with math. They can check themselves, right? So this one habit, like turning executive standoffs into sort of mathematical equations, it's probably the single most valuable skill a PM can bring to a room, in my humble opinion. All right, so bringing the math. I put together a follow-up presentation to lay everything out. And here's the whole thing in one equation. Option C pays us 95 BPS, which is 40 BPS more than option B's 55, but it also costs about 850K a year in compliance stuff, right? So the question becomes how much volume has to flow through us before that extra 0.4% actually covers that $850,000. So set it up, 0.4% times X equals 850K, solve for X, and you get $212.5 million in annual volume. That is the break-even line. Below $212.5 million a year, option C loses money, and above it, option C wins. Now, check out the projection against that line, though. Our GMV was modeled at 32 million a month, times 12, which is 384 million a year at maturity. That is above the line. That is above 212.5 million a year. But here's the key though. C takes about 6+ quarter to build. And our board gave us only an 18-month timeline to hit our NRR target, right? The better margin arrives too late to matter, in my opinion. And we would completely miss our window. So my recommendation was prioritize speed to market and launch on option B now and spend 3 extra engineering weeks building what's called an abstraction layer. So abstraction layer is just code structured to decouple our front end from our back end partner so we can swap out the partner underneath later without rebuilding everything. So this prevents technical debt, and this also lets us revisit option C at month 18 with real data and without projections at the time. So did you guys notice what happened here as a PM move? I had to breach the two sides, right? So the CRO's margin ambition didn't get rejected. It got rescheduled. It's sitting right there on the product roadmap at month 18. And the CFO got the cheaper, faster path today with high GTM or go-to-market velocity. So he signed off in the same meeting. That's my job, right? That's a PM's job. Propose a solution where both sides can find their priority in it. In product, we call this build, measure, lean loop. You ship the feature, you measure the user data, and immediately adapt. All right, so now next challenge, and this one's external. It turns out that 1,100 of our accounts were already using an old third-party payments integration. And that partner paid us rebates. So every time one of our plumbers used that partner's payment service, the partner sent us a little referral kickback. That is $10.50 per account per month. So basically, a thank you for sending them the business. So if you do the math, 1,100 accounts times 10.5 times 12 months, that's $138,000 a year of easy peasy money, plus a partnership our business development team really valued. So our new product creates what's called a channel conflict in this case, which is when your new revenue path competes with a partner you already depend on, right? Managing this is also a core PM responsibility. So as a PM, what you have to do is you have to balance business viability with ecosystem help. The partnership VP wanted grandfather all 1,100 accounts forever, meaning that never touch them. The CRO, on the other hand, wanted to shut the old integration down within 90 days. Another conflict, we got to start working on the resolution. So like I've been saying throughout the entire video, that as a PM, a big part of our role is cross-functional stakeholder management, which means that you have to align conflicting go-to-market incentives to find a win-win situation. And that is not easy. It can get tricky sometimes, but you got to be creative. You got to think outside the box. So I proposed a third path, and I built it all together with the partnerships VP. And I also had to act as the critical bridge between product strategy and business development, right? I said that, you know what? Existing users would get a 12-month fee match. So switching would cost them nothing, right? So that was a deliberate churn mitigation and and sort of risk management strategy. Plus, they get the one feature the third party physically cannot offer. That is automatic invoice to payment matching. Remember, that was our unfair advantage. That was our moat. And we have to leverage this product differentiation to drive the user adoption. So what we found, and also the migration would stay 100% voluntary. We did not shut anything down. Think about it from the plumber side. So our plumber with a 6-hour Friday headache, reconciliation headache, he's got a great reason to switch, but some other plumber might not even mind his current setup at all. So fine, let him keep using whatever he wants to use. Nobody gets forced. So here's what happened. 451 of those 1100, which is about 41%, they switched by choice. So that validated our PLG or product-led growth approach. It also proved that value, not force, value drives adoption. And those who switched, they generated 451 times $34,000 times 0.55% because of option B, which comes to about $84,000 a month, roughly $1 million a year. And the rebates we lost on them about $57,000 a year. So we gained roughly $17 for every dollar we gave up. This is a massive net positive ROI, and it did validate the product success in this case. All right, so the 649 accounts that wanted to stay, they stayed. They were untouched, and the partnership survived, and it proved that we achieved product market fit without destroying our partner ecosystem. All right, so next, the hiccups. Well, nothing in this PM world ships clean. So quickly, more drama. This is where PM shifts from strategy to execution and continuous optimization. So during our beta, a lot of people were dropping off during sign up, and it traced back to a UI issue around KYC, know your customer, which is the legally required identity check every payment provider has to run. So our flow was suddenly asking for social security numbers and bank documents, and with zero warning upfront or in advance, and people just bailed. This was a major user friction point in the user onboarding experience. So what I did, I worked with our data analyst to instrument the funnel, meaning that we wanted to measure exactly where in the sign-up steps people were quitting. I had to make the designers rebuild the flow with an upfront checklist and save and resume, and the engineers pre-filled the data we already had on a file. That is just our role as the hub, orchestrating the UX design and engineering team for us to all come together to solve user pain points. And guess what happened afterwards? Completion went from 52% to 81%. And this 29% lift in our conversion rate directly optimized our activation metrics. There were a few more bumps like that along the way, but you get the idea. Find the drop-off, fix it with the right team, and move on, which is the heart of agile product iteration. Now, this is the part you've all been waiting for. Let's run the numbers. The total attached accounts, 1,088. That breaks into two groups, right? 637 brand new adopters. These are the customers who had never taken payments through us before and turned the feature on, plus the 451 who migrated over from the legacy third-party partner integration. So together, 1,088 out of 6,800 customers, which is a 16% feature adoption rate against the projected 14% we modeled. And that is phenomenal, because when your actual performance beats your model, that's exactly what you want to see. Now, on the revenue side, those 1,088 accounts each run about $34,000 a month. So that's 37 millions a month in GMV flowing through us in this case. Our 0.55% cut of that is about $203,000 a month in high margin transactional revenue. On top of that, we have shipped an optional upsell feature called instant payouts, which instead of waiting, the normal 1 to 2 days for card money to reach your bank, you get it the same day for a 1% fee. And 305 of our accounts loved it and used it on about half of their payment volume. And that 1% fee on the slides added another $52,000 a month. Total roughly $255,000 a month, which is 3.1 million a year in ARR run rate. And the board's key target, remember NRR? Let's do the math here. So remember, we started at 97. That was 100 minus 5 points lost to revenue churn plus 2 points from upgrades. Now, two things have changed. First, the customers using payments turned out to have a churn rate about half as high as everyone else. And it makes perfect sense because once your money flows through a product, customer stickiness skyrockets because leaving means ripping out your primary financial system. So that improvement softened our net revenue churn drag from 5 points down to 4.2, right? That's the first one, right? Second, and this is the big one, all that new payments revenue counts as an expansion ARPU, which means existing customers paying us more, right? So take our $255,000 a month of new transactional revenue divided by the 1.82 million subscription base, that is 14 full points of expansion. So the new math becomes 100 minus 4.2 plus 2 plus 14, 111.8, and rounded to 112%. The board's target was 110. We did not just hit it, we beat it. And our new payments product drove 14 of the 15 points of improvement. So let's zoom out for a second now. One strategic product decision that was validated with rigorous user discovery, that was defended with data, and shipped in alignment with your whole cross-functional team brought in about $3.1 million a year in brand new expansion revenue and took the company's most important growth metric from shrinking to beating the board's target. And that is what product management is when it's done right. And it's not just about managing a backlog of features or color coding a timeline. Yes, those are important. But what's more important is finding the intersection where acute customer pain meets this massive business value and having the data-driven conviction to guide your team there. If you want to dive deeper into the exact frameworks, models, math used for the project, I've written the entire case study out in a detailed blog post on my website. You can find that link right down in the description below. And if you found this case study valuable, please hit the like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and let me know in the comments, how would you have handled the standoff between CRO and CFO? Thanks for watching. See you later. Bye.